Well, hello and welcome to the Farmington Public Schools District Spotlight for the month of March. And because we are in March, March is Reading Month. And so we have a very special spotlight this month to highlight our school district's One School, One Book program. So I have with me Jim White, who is our wonderful district media coordinator. We have Miss Margaret Hendrickson, who's our director of curriculum instruction and assessment. And we have the fantastic Thomas family. So we have Mrs. Kimberly Thomas, and then Devin, who's a fourth grader in Mrs. Butler's class. Can you wave your hand, Devin? And then we have Dallas, who's a third grader in Mrs. Gundle-White's class. Can you raise your hand? All right. So we're going to talk about One School, One Book, and we'll start with Mr. White. Can you just tell our viewers, what is it? What's One School? What's One School, One Book?
Well, thank you, Dr. Delgado. One School, One Book is a national model, and it literally means one book, one school. But Farmington, about over 10 years ago, Farmington decided to try it for across a whole district. So we call really it's one district, one book. And the idea is that we send a copy of every family in Farmington in K-5 schools gets a copy of the same book. And so for the month of March, the families are reading it, and wherever the kids go in school and in the community, they can possibly run into someone who's reading the same book.
That's fantastic. And how is a book chosen in the One School, One Book? Really, maybe we should change the name to One District, One Book. But how is a book chosen?
So, you need to find a book that is interesting for fifth graders and that's accessible for kindergartners and for everyone in between. And again, the model is for families to read, and Farmington has the wonderful challenge of having families who don't always speak English at home. So we need to sometimes, maybe in other parts of the country, the parents are reading to children, but in Farmington, it might be that children are reading to parents, and it's a really wonderful trait about our district. So trying to find a book that meets everybody's needs. And then since I've been in this role, I've also as we have done, as Ms. Hendrickson will say, we've tried to work very hard about getting stories that reflect who our students are. And so trying to pick a book that has the right characters in it, or has the right story. And so this year, actually, long story, but this book was actually chosen last year, but it came in too late for us to use due to all of the supply chain issues. But what happened was we had a small committee that I offered three choices to that committee, and they decided on the book that we've landed on this year. So it was a committee's choice.
Well, fantastic. Well, without further ado, we can kind of hit a drum roll here. What is the book One School, One Book this year?
That's it. And if anyone saw your picture on Facebook, or if they heard you last night, I know I appreciate that you've been reading it. It's called Cilla Lee Jenkins, Future Author Extraordinaire. And it's one I'm really happy to find and be able to bring the character Cilla Lee Jenkins to Farmington.
That is fantastic. And I joked last night, I showed this at the Board of Education meeting. I'm so like type A that even with a children's book, I have to do my tabs and my flags and my highlights. And so I'm really, really enjoying this book, and I hope all of our families are too. So let me shift to Mrs. Hendrickson and just ask kind of a more philosophical question. So why are efforts like this in school districts, especially in public school districts, why are they important to promote literacy?
One of the, I have to sit in the research and like best practice and what's really good for kids and supporting their learning is one of the things we know, it's a well-established fact at this point, that the more kids read, the higher their achievement. And so it's really important that each classroom, each building, and the district and the community as a whole, including each individual home within and outside of our community, including those families that come in from outside of our community, need to have access to text-rich learning environments. The more kids engage in text, reading with others or by themselves, engages them in seeing themselves, in seeing others, gaining information about the world, engaging in different levels of vocabulary and understanding and expression and emotion that comes across in text. So whether it's informational text or fictional text like this, the more kids have access to more words in their life, the more ready they are to tackle and be literate individuals as we move into the community. And when we define literacy, it's not just reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It is about reading, writing, and speaking and listening to have an impact on the world. You gain understanding through reading, but you also can impact the world through reading, writing, and speaking and listening. So when we talk about literacy in the district, it's not just the basic reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It's about how do we use that to learn, and how do we do that to express and impact the world around us.
Absolutely. And we also know that the more that you read and the variety of books you read, it increases your vocabulary significantly, which helps access all sorts of different careers and makes the more challenging curriculum as you get older more accessible. So, well, thank you. That's wonderful. So let's talk to the Thomases. So let's hear about your journey here. So I guess the first, here's a kind of an easy question is, are you enjoying the story? And then I have some more follow-up. So maybe I can start with, with Mrs. Thomas. Are you enjoying the story? And maybe tell us a little bit about how are you reading this kind of as a family? Are you doing this individually? Are you doing like a read aloud? Are you doing it together? Are you talking about the chapters? How's it going with one book, one school?
Well, first of all, it's really a good book. I'm glad that it's something that's based on a child that the kids can all, like you were saying, everybody can kind of identify what she's going through in being in school. We definitely get a chance to read our book together. We usually do it in the evenings before the boys go to bed. I don't do it individually. It's just easier for me to sit with both of them and just, get through the chapters that we have to read. So, yeah, and we'll talk about it because Miss Gundle-White, she'll have like a trivia question or something every night. And then, that kind of makes more of a opportunity to discuss what we just read. So it'll be in their minds, But yes, we definitely enjoy reading the book. And it's actually a good book. I'm getting into it myself. Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, you mentioned the trivia question. That was going to be one of my questions. So Dallas, you're in Mrs. Gundle-White's class. So have you been able to figure out any of the trivia questions? Is that something that you look forward to looking at, each time she posts them?
Yeah.
Did you figure some of them out?
Yeah.
And do you remember maybe an example of what was one of the trivia questions that she posted that you maybe some of your classmates were able to answer?
I don't remember any of them.
You don't remember?
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
The trivia question wasn't the question from today, or was that yesterday? When she talked about how Colleen and Celia made up.
Yesterday.
That's okay. Yep. And so, that's part of the engagement that our teachers are having with our children, as are their students, as we read this together, we can, have clues, we can have activities, we can drop trivia questions, we can look at inference. I know leading up to this, we kind of gave you some bread crumbs of clues of the book. Like, this fictional story features a girl, age 8, as the main character. And then another clue, this book can be enjoyed by all ages. This is the author's first novel. The author bases it on her own child. And so a little bit of clues to try to help people get excited about what the book might be as we go through. So let me ask a question for Devin. Do you think that you would end up being friends with Cilla Lee Jenkins if you ever met her?
Maybe. I don't know.
Does she seem like kind of a fun character, a fun girl, or what's your first impression of Cilla Lee Jenkins?
like you said, a fun girl.
I know when I read the first couple of chapters, I know that and we don't want to do too much of a spoiler alert and give away the book, but I
Right.
know that one of the things at the beginning is that her mom's going to have another baby,
Yeah.
and so she's not real happy about that. And so, do you remember what she calls, either for Devin or Dallas? Do you remember what she calls her little sister to be?
Yeah.
What does she call her?
The blob.
The Blob. And why does she do that?
Because the ultrasound looks like a big blob.
Yeah.
So the
It was funny because when we were reading that part and they looked at the picture that they had of the ultrasound, I said, they were like, oh, my, what is that? And I said, you guys have ultrasound pictures like this too. And that reminds me, I got to go downstairs and grab them so they can look at them. Because I'm like, all little babies look like this when they're in their mom's stomach, So we laughed about that.
That's fantastic.
Dr. Delgado,
Yes.
I'm a twin, and I have an older sister.
Okay.
Older sister is 5 years older, and she had a name for us as well. We were the little comborting beasties. I don't know what that means. It's a word she came up with, but she called us comborting beasties. She was very frustrated that not just one other baby was coming, but two other babies was coming.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, Priscilla is not really happy about her little sister, and that's really kind of the crux of the story. She wants to become a famous author before her sister gets here and steals all the attention. So that's the beginning of the book. I won't give any more away from that. To Devin and to Dallas, does Scylla remind you of any other characters in the story? So when you think about character development or other people in the story, does she remind you of anybody else in the story?
No.
No? What about you, Devin? Does she remind you of anybody?
I don't think so.
I would be curious to know, does she remind you of any other characters you've read about in other stories? Like, have you ever met a character like Scylla Lee?
Yeah.
Scylla Lee Jenkins?
What about that? She's very outgoing and does have a lot to say. Does that remind you of anybody?
No.
Devin?
No.
That's okay. Well, and oftentimes the conversations with our teachers is we'll look at a couple different books that we read and try to draw those connections and draw those comparisons.
Yes.
Yep. So let me go back to Mr. White. Just kind of a broader question. What kind of other activities are, and actually this could be for Mrs. Hendrickson and Mr. White, what other activities are going on in Farmington Public Schools for March's Reading Month?
Well, okay, so I want to answer that, but I've forgotten an important point. I just want to give credit to everybody who's been reading this book, like you, Dr. Delgado. Other people at central office have asked me for this book. School board members are reading the book. The Farmington Community Library is reading the book. And then I think one of the coolest things is that our bus drivers are reading the book. And so everywhere our students go, whether they're in remote, like Dallas and Devin, or in person, they can't escape. They can't escape one school, one book. So it's fun. It's fun. But thanks for asking about other activities. Obviously, One School, One Book is a K-5 activity, and at the secondary, there's a lot of things going on. Some March Madness type competitions, getting students to vote on whether they like this book or that book, and they go through a bracket type tournament. There's some book fairs and some book swaps. And then the big one that is going on at middle school is Battle of the Books, which is actually organized by the Farmington Community Library, but all of the each of our middle schools has heavy participation in that, and that's the one where students join a team, and then there's a night in April. They read all through March, and then there's a night in April when they actually attend the battle and answer questions, and then also participate in a costume contest. So it's a very fun, active night. Those are the big activities that are happening in March, and if I can, if you give me a moment, I'd love to name all the media aides who are supporting these activities.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much. So at elementary, so the One School, One Book is wouldn't be possible without Jesse Partridge, Katie Eichbrecht, Nate Ollie, Kelly Hansen, Amy Simpson, Barb Haynes and Lindsay Smith. And our middle school media aides are Kristen Ketzler, Lori Klotz, and Gail Bruin. And at high school, we have Renee Comstock and Helena Curry. And I just want to thank all of them for all of their efforts this month, too.
And to add on to those bigger events, what often happens during this time, particularly at our K-5 buildings, is our teachers start to put feelers out to the community and to people within FPS to come in and be surprise guest secret readers. And so we often start to see pictures of that occurring across the system. One of the things that I appreciate about Farmington Public Schools was, as I first came in, there was this intention to make sure that we had large volumes of books come into each and every classroom K-12, as well as our media centers, so our students have access to books every day. And one of the things that I think is a strength here in Farmington is students having access to a book of their choice each and every day, in not just the media center, but in their classroom. Mm-hmm. And then also finding ways for our students to connect to the public library as an additional extension of text. And so we are working with the Farmington Public Library to work on having a field trip for our first graders, going to see what they have to offer and how they can access text. It's all about how do we get kids accessing text. And so I just wanted to point out those two things for you, Dr. Delgado.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Let me go back to our Thomas family. Other than obviously this wonderful book that we have here, what kind of books do you like to read? So let me start with Devin. What kind of books do you like to read? What are you interested in?
I like the books that have like really cool characters in them.
Yeah. Because they love video games, and then also, what was that? It was a book. Well, when they were growing up, when they were younger, we used to read Pete the Cat books, like that whole line.
Mm-hmm.
So books that's like kind of that has like a fun tone to it. Very interactive, and I appreciate being able to read books like the Celia Jenkins book myself with the boys, because it gives them something else to put their focus on, outside of always wanting to play video games or be on their tablets. This is something that we have to do as a family together, which we do other things as a family together, play games and stuff. But this book, it helps to make them be more focused on something outside of just, like I said, playing video games. So,
okay. How about Dallas? What do you have a special type of book that you like to read? Any other interests that you might want to read about?
I like graphic novels.
Graphic novels? Yeah. We have more and more inventory of graphic novels in our schools, that's for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So I have a question for everybody on the call, and we'll start with, let's see, from my left to right, we'll start with Dallas, and then we'll move right across. So here's a really important question. Where's your favorite place to read? Like when you think of kind of cozying up with a book, where's your favorite place to read?
In my bed.
Where's that?
In my bed.
In your bed? So you like to be in your bed, under the covers there reading. Okay. How about Mrs. Thomas? Where's your favorite place to read?
My favorite place to read is anywhere there's quiet. So I have to find, because it's a lot of people.
Good luck with that.
So I have to find. Sometimes I have to, I read in the car when I pull up in the driveway from, before coming in the house. I'll do a little bit of reading. But a lot of times when it's, later on in the evening, I'll do my reading probably in my bed as well. Before I go to sleep, do some reading, or every blue moon, I'll go to the library by myself so I can, have that quiet time as well. But yes, that's where I like to do my reading.
All right. How about you, Devin?
Probably in the living room on the couch.
Mm-hmm. Living room on the couch. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. How about Mr. White? Where's your favorite place to read?
Oh, probably any of those, but maybe to add one on my porch in the summer.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes,
Yeah, get some
absolutely.
nice fresh air. That's
Me too.
excellent.
Me too.
How about Mrs. Hendrickson? Where's your favorite place to read?
So I don't know if it's a place, it's my conditions around me. So I need pillows and blankets, and I need to be curled up somewhere. So whether that's on the couch or in my bed or really sitting outside on our front porch,
Mhm.
Mr. White said, I just like to be all cozied up with the book.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. That sounds good.
Well, and I have two favorite places. So I read every weekend, and so I have my own like dad's lazy boy. And I'm like Mrs. Hendrickson. I've got to have my blankets, I've got to have my neck pillow, and then I put on, I can't read like silent, so I put on like a rain soundtrack. So I have a little kind of white noise or yeah,
Yes.
and then I do my reading. And then the other thing is, if you saw the picture as we were leading up to launching this book, I actually read on an airplane. And so it's anytime I get to fly, it's like the 2 or 3 hours where I don't get the Wi-Fi and I make myself stop working and just enjoy reading. And so, quick funny story, I brought this book on midwinter break. I was on an airplane and I told our district that I would get a picture of myself reading the book to show to all of our students and families that you can read anywhere. And
Yeah.
so rather than have this book of me, grown man with a little girl on the cover reading a book, I asked the lady next to me, I said, hey, I'm a teacher. Would you mind taking my picture? And so she took a picture of me reading on the airplane to just show our families that reading is so fun and you can do it anywhere.
Right.
Well, my final question for Mr. White, and then I'll open it up for any final thoughts from our family and Mrs. Hendrickson. Does Susan Tan, the author, so this is her first novel, and it's a series that she's going to do, and she's off to an incredible start. I mean, this is a huge hit. Does Susan Tan know what's going on in Farmington Public Schools?
Well, she actually does, Dr. Delgado. I reached out to her before February break. I should have done it before, but earlier. But I reached out to her and told her that to give some numbers, that we sent 3,700 copies of her book home and to introduce Cilla Lee Jenkins to Farmington, and she responded, and she was very excited. And in fact, there might be, she has hinted that she might be sending something to Farmington students. So Dallas and Devin,
nice.
I don't know, you guys might be watching for that. And then actually Lanigan yesterday, this is just in case people are watching, Monday on March 6th, Lanigan got a chance to Zoom with her. So the whole school got to Zoom.
Wow.
With Susan. Yeah, so it's really quite a day. So
Yeah,
she does know. And she's very excited that we're all reading her and talking about her book. So.
And this is her first novel. So,
Yes,
for any student out there who thinks maybe you like to write or maybe you could write a book, you can do it. It can happen. And so, so she's a great example of that. So any final thoughts from Mrs. Hendrickson about this wonderful One School, One Book initiative, reading, literacy, and any final thoughts?
I think just for me, as an individual, our intent is for kids to see themselves in book as well as see others. So they're getting to know themselves as well as the rest of the world. And we don't always see ourselves in every character, but we might see elements or pieces and parts. And so this negotiation around her name spoke to me. So I appreciated you raising that at the board meeting last night. I go by Margaret, but there are certain people in life that calls me Mags or Maggie. There's actually some people that call me Uncle Mags, which is an interesting story. But my childhood, I was raised as Peg and Peggy because my twin sister was Pat, and so we were Pat and Peg. And I didn't like my name for a really long time. One, it was only 3 letters, so my name was Peg Roy. And I wanted it to be a longer name. So I moved to my real name, which is Margaret, as adults. And then I married a gentleman last name Hendrickson. So now I have Margaret Hendrickson, and I used to have 6 letters, and now I have a lot longer letters.
Yes.
But the idea of just that grappling with your own name spoke to me, even though not every piece of her story I could identify with. So I just, it raised for me some of that nice reflection. So I hope that each and every kid finds something in each and every book that they read that speaks to them. And then what do they learn about somebody else?
And one of the great things about this story is it is kind of a quasi-autobiography. Susan Tan, the author, writes about this and really references a lot of cultural references of her growing up as a biracial child with Chinese ancestry. And there are some words that she shares with us, as well as some customs when she's with her paternal, I think it's her paternal grandparents, who really help enhance that culture. And so that's really a support of our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the district too, as we select books for everybody. How about to Mrs. Thomas or the boys? Any final thoughts about kind of your experience participating in this One School, One Book initiative of Farmington Public Schools?
Yeah, I definitely, like I was saying before, I definitely appreciate Farmington School District giving the kids an opportunity to participate in something that everybody can, gain something from. And I'm glad that the book is like a down the middle type of book, because everybody don't have the same type of beliefs, or everybody are not into all of the same types of things. But this book is kind of like down the middle, and everybody can like get something from it. And I kind of was like reading this book. It made me feel like Ms. Hendrickson was saying, it spoke to me in different ways. Like when her and her girlfriend was going through something, like that's a real thing. And her being a child, she has to learn how to figure out, how can I deal with this? This is my best friend. I miss her. And, so yeah, it's definitely some life lessons in there as well, so the only way that the kids can learn this kind of stuff is if they have these type of programs where they're reading, because I'm sure my boys wouldn't go to the library and pick this book because it's based around a girl.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm sure my boys wouldn't pick this book and be like, yeah, I want to read this. But since we are reading it and it's something that, we have to do, they're able to see a different side of something coming from a girl's aspect, and that's a learning curve for them, So I definitely appreciate it. And I think it's, it's good. And I also want to say that, when the books are being chosen for the school, maybe it can kind of be like some type of I don't know, something where the parents get a chance to kind of put input in on like what kind of books, you know what I mean? Because like for instance, my boys, I don't let them read stuff that has anything to do with like witches and magic and drag, we're not into sorcery or anything like that. So if it was that type of book, we wouldn't have been able to participate in it. So that's the reason why I appreciate, having this book that's kind of like down the middle for all people, So yes, thank you so much for letting us, be able to participate in that. And so if ever there's a time when you're picking a new book, maybe that could be something, parents get a chance to, kind of put their
As long as the parents keep it a secret.
Yes, a secret. Yes.
And I also was remiss in mentioning, Mr. William Thomas was going to join us. He's reading the book with the family as well.
Yes.
He's working for DTE and helping us keep our power on. So we thank him for all that he's doing. But he's also reading with his sons and his wife as well. So okay, boys, you get the last word. So maybe fill in the blank.
Yes.
Reading is blank.
Fun.
We'll start with Devin.
Fun.
Fun.
Awesome.
There we go. No better way to end, but we want to thank you and thank everybody. Mr. White, just 1,000 thanks for your leadership in this. I know that you really take this. It's a labor of love for you and all the rest of the media specialists and all of our teachers who support this and our parents who are participating. So, and of course, all of our wonderful students who are enjoying this excellent and highly recommended book. So with that ends our March District Spotlight for the Farmington Public Schools. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.